Hey, hello team. Welcome to today's live where we're talking about how to stand up for yourself. I was just thinking, this is an important goal for a lot of people, myself included, to be completely honest with you. And so on this past week's episode of Love, Happiness, and Success, sorry, I'm trying to let in our friends on Instagram over here. Okay, here we go. So on this past week's episode of Love, Happiness, and Success, I had the great pleasure of speaking with Dr. Sunita Saw, who has just written the most fascinating book. It's called Defy. Hope I don't botch this, but I believe that the title is How to Say No in a World That Demands Yes. And it was really interesting. If you have a chance to check it out, if this is something that you're working on, I think you would really get a lot out of it. I know that I learned a lot from talking to Dr. Sunita. So if you want to check out the last episode, it's right here, How to Stand Up to Someone. There's an article, obviously, but I mean, Dr. Saz, she's been researching this for a long time. And she went into a lot of the science, honestly, behind why we often feel pressured to agree to things, to comply, to go along, when it's actually in opposition, not just to what we want, but sometimes even to our core values. And the big takeaway was that this is a skill that can be cultivated. We can get better at this kind of thing. And so it was very positive, very empowering, and I hope you check it out. But that is not why we're here. You can go listen to the podcast, but we're here today really to talk about you and your growth goals in this area. So if this is something that you are working on personally, so standing up for yourself, having more of a backbone, feeling better able to say no to people, maybe without feeling guilty about it, being able to set and maintain healthy boundaries more effectively, I would love to hear what is on your mind, and hopefully today offer you a bit of guidance, feedback, perspective in order to support your growth. So I know that sometimes we talk about personal things here on the live stream, and it may be weird to put these kinds of questions into the comments. And if you don't want to do that, you can get in touch with me confidentially. Come on over to growingself.com/Dear Lisa, and you can send me a confidential message right here that I will get and respond to. And I won't mention your name. If you get in touch with me that way, I will assume that you would prefer that I don't. So who here has trouble standing up for themselves? No judgment. Anyone? I know that this has been a problem for me personally in the past. I think I might have like slightly avoidant tendencies, but I mean, I have felt anxious sometimes when somebody wants me to do something, or I'm in a situation that I'm not really fully comfortable continuing with, but I don't know, confronting people like it would create a thing. I'd rather like go along. Can anybody else relate, or is it just me? Who's working on this? Okay. Yeah. You just avoid it too. All right. I hear you. It's hard. Who else can relate to us? What do you guys do? Is this an issue, or are you all really good at defying? No? Yeah. Well, it was really interesting talking to Dr. Saw about, again, the reasons why. It's quite anxiety-provoking, I think, for all of us, because we anticipate consequences for saying no or being defiant. And one of the things that I thought was so interesting and also really true, and this might resonate for you, is that from earliest childhood, right? Like, we got in trouble for not going along with what our parents wanted, right? I mean, who can relate? And I'm not talking about like some kind of crazy, abusive, violent family, okay? But like, if your parents wanted you to do something and you didn't, and you said, no, I don't want to do that, like, what would happen? We would get in trouble, right? And so from very early stages of our development, we were socialized that we need to comply or else. And of course, for some people, there could be like capital T trauma involved. But I mean, even normal, happy, perfectly nice childhoods, we did our homework. We came home when we were supposed to, right? Okay. And that's not bad. I mean, we need to have those kinds of rules and boundaries. But, I think it is also true that maybe you had preferences or a different perspective than your parents. And maybe this became more prominent as you were an adolescent, right? But like that individuation and it is actually okay for us to have different thoughts and feelings and opinions than our parents. But unless we're careful, this old conditioning can come with us into our relationships, into our jobs, into sometimes, our ability to even make decisions for ourselves. Like we can start looking around to other people. I mean, who can relate to what I'm talking about? Has this been an issue for any of you? Or like, you perceive yourself as being a good person, you're agreeable, conscientious, do what you're supposed to do. But that maybe this is like created other problems in your life, in your relationship. Because that was actually another point that Dr. Sa brought up, is that even though we're kind of solving a short-term problem when we go along with things and say yes, it creates other problems for us, particularly if it becomes habitual, in the sense that we are frequently going along with things that maybe we don't really want to do. It begins to damage our self-esteem, honestly. It begins to damage our trust in ourselves, to protect ourselves. It like damages our reputation with ourselves in some ways. But also over time, if you are kind of bending in the direction of what other people want, you can become quite out of touch with your own values and with your own wisdom, to be completely honest. So there are real consequences. So who has questions or anything that you would like to talk about with me while we're together today? I don't have a ton of time. I have to end right at the bottom of the hour, but I'm here every week to be here for you and to answer your questions. So if this is a growth area for you, I would love to hear what is on your mind, and so that I can help you. Who would like to share? I feel like I just shared a whole bunch about me. Okay, who's next? I'm going to pause because I know we have a delay. And I'm going to turn off the notifications on my phone while I'm waiting. Anyone? I will assume that you joined me today because this is something that you want to work on. Okay. Well, and so let me share a resource. One of the things that did come up from my conversation with Dr. Shah and from the podcast was really around the long-term impact that this can have on our self-concept, our self-esteem. And so I am going to send something to you in our chat here. Okay, so I just sent you a link to a free resource that I have on my website. It's a self-esteem test. And it's totally free, bunch of questions. It'll kind of get a measure of where you are in terms of your self-esteem, your self-confidence. It'll provide a report with some recommendations on things that you can do to start growing in this area. Because your ability to say no to people and avoid people-pleasing, to have boundaries, is directly related to your self-esteem. And here's the thing. We think, that people with low self-esteem would have a harder time doing these things, which I think can be true. But it is also true that not doing these things damages your self-esteem. So also, if one of your goals for 2025 is to have higher self-esteem, it is very important that you start being a little bit more defiant. Okay, so, all right. And so I see some wonderful questions. So, here's one. I am in a relationship where I am unable to voice any opinion. Okay, and so I'm curious to know, and I usually try to please. Yeah. You want to be able to learn how to voice an opinion. So, just out of curiosity, is this part of the dynamic of the relationship? Like, are you with somebody who would be upset and potentially punishing if you were a little bit more opinionated or defiant or did not? I mean, obviously, we don't want to be argumentative and belligerent. Like, that's not helpful either. But it is absolutely okay to say, I don't want to do that. So what was the situation with your relationship? Do you feel like it's coming from your own old programming? Or have you been maybe more assertive in other situations, but there's something about this relational dynamic that makes you feel like it's not okay with this particular human to say no? And I'm so sorry about the delay, you guys. I know it's annoying. And while we're waiting, I think it's important to be able to consider this on like multiple levels, because on the one hand, we bring our stuff into every relationship. And so if you have unfinished business or if you have things to work on related to this, you will have this experience in your relationships. And it is also true that we are influenced and impacted by our relational systems, and that we therefore behave different ways with different people. So with really emotionally safe, accepting people, it can feel safer for us to practice these things. And so I think that that's just something that's important to take into consideration. Oh, and thank you for responding to my question. You said that you feel conditioned to comply, as this is how you were parented. And that's really insightful and important to know, because, and we could have another conversation about parenting styles. But for any parents listening to me, like, I think, and I do this with my own kids, like to be thinking about that short term versus long term. And so short term, yes, you want to have a kid who is able to respect limits and, generally speaking, behave in ways that are consistent with a well-functioning home, right? But you also really do need to make enough space for kids to have their own opinions and have those acknowledged and responded to sometimes, because your goal is not to raise a perfectly compliant human that can't stand up for themselves and has a hard time setting boundaries. No, it's to raise somebody who's confident and assertive and absolutely able to say, no, I'm not going along with that. But so how do you as parents help to support those abilities in your parenting relationship? I just wanted to say that out loud because it's important, and I think it's an alignment here. And so with your situation, when you were talking about that you wanted to be able to learn how to say no or voice an opinion, it starts by practicing. And in the context of a relationship, you may actually want to begin by having that conversation with your partner in a really just like emotionally safe way. Say, I have realized something about myself. Like, don't make it about them. This is about you. I realized something about myself, which is that because of XYZ in my early childhood, I have a really hard time like talking about how I really feel. And this is something that I would like to work on. But I need to practice. I need to test this. And it makes me feel anxious to do this. But I just wanted to tell you that I want to practice doing this. Would that be okay? Because that's step one. Like, give yourself permission. But also, if you're doing it in a relationship, let the other person know. Because then, too, you're sort of setting the scene to say, I feel like I need to tell you what I really want to have for dinner, but I'm feeling anxious about that. This is like one of those things I was saying, and then they could be like, oh, okay, where do you really want to go for dinner? Like, I want Mexican food. Okay, let's do it. And so, but just like practicing in those small, low impact ways, it actually just gets you habituated to making small little stands for yourself in the context of an intimate relationship. And it's like a muscle. The more you do it, the more easier and easier it gets. And you will also find that if it is like higher impact things, more impactful things where you have to say maybe something to your partner that they might actually not really like to hear, that is okay. But to be able to even have that conversation, I need to talk about something that has really been bothering me kind of a lot. And it's about, something in the way we're handling things together. It is so hard for me to do this. I'm having like all kinds of anxiety right now. You might not agree with what I have to say, but I feel like it's really important for both of us, for me to be authentic. And I'm confident that we can do something constructive with this, but we just have to get it out in the open. So you're like kind of setting the stage for them to be, an emotionally safe person for you, and also for you to practice saying what you really think and what you really feel. On the subject of emotional safety, I do have another free resource for you that I just shared with you in the comments. But I also have a free resource for you. It is a totally free 2-part training with me. It's on my website. If you go to growingself.com/communication. So like what I was just sharing with you would be like one tiny little facet of emotionally safe communication, which is one of a number of different pillars, actually, when it comes to communication that connects. And again, just like setting boundaries or being more defiant, these are all learnable, practicable skills, but just educating yourself in this area can be really important, and particularly if your partner does it with you, that might also be really important to support your growth in this area. So anyway, great question. I love this. Okay. So other super duper questions. And I think we probably have time for one more. So how about this one? This is another really good one. I've learned that giving too much of myself isn't good for my health. I think it's been my old way of distancing myself from grief or stressful times. Oh my goodness, how insightful. And I'm just so glad that you are sharing this with our community here. That's awesome. Because it sounds like you've really done some work here, to be completely honest, that like maybe in the past you were a lot more likely to go along or be compliant, maybe at the expense of yourself or your values. And you noticed over time that it kind of did bad things to you. And so that since then you have been working on this, practicing it, and that you're still aware that when you are feeling sad, when you have grief, when it's stressful, you are more likely to go along with things that you don't really feel good about, that people pleasing or not, maintaining boundaries. And so that's amazing. And that's how it's done, right? And it's not perfect. Like, yeah, I have had a hard day. I'm not really in a great place right now. And I am probably not doing a good job of standing up for myself right now because it's just not a good time for me. So this is an old pattern. And that's also okay. You're aware of it. And the goal here is not perfection. It's like, I'm a little bit better than I was a couple months ago, right? And just that like constant growth. So that's amazing. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. That's really good. A good example of how it's done. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts on this topic today? Again, we are talking about how to stand up for yourself and some of the things that can make that difficult to do and that lead us to engage in people pleasing, having a hard time asserting ourselves, saying no, having opinions even, or setting and maintaining healthy boundaries. Is anybody else working on this or have a question that they'd like to hear discussed? And again, of course, if you want to ask me an anonymous question, you can do it here with this link, growingself.com/dear-Lisa, because, sometimes this stuff gets pretty personal, and it's understandable if you might not want to have this be in the comment section of a social post. So I'll give you guys a sec because I know there's a delay. Yay. No. Oops. I lost my comments. Okay. Well, not quite as much conversation on this topic as there has been on topics we've talked about recently. And you know what? That's great. I will assume that you guys are in a good place. But again, if you do get a chance, truly, one of my favorite things about hosting the Love, Happiness, and Success podcast is that it gives me personally an opportunity to talk to some really smart people who have done just thought leaders. They're doing original research. They're really uncovering things. They are pushing the edges of scientific inquiry on some of these psychological and relational principles. And Dr. Sunita Shah is definitely one of them. So check out this past week's podcast. Let me know what you think. And then we'll do this again. So I'm going to be taking a little bit of time off, which I hope you are as well, over the holiday break. But I am going to be back in business the week of January the 6th. And that week, we're going to be talking about a couple of really exciting things. I also had the opportunity to speak to Dr. Dick Schwartz recently, who is the another really important thought leader. He's the founder of a system of therapy called internal family systems, so parts theory. Fascinating conversation, and we're going to be visiting and talking about that when we get together again. So I'll keep you guys posted. And in the meantime, thank you very much for joining me today. And I hope you have a wonderful holiday break. All right. Take care.